I'm curious about this because there are normally three components to price gouging, as I understand it. Is it a period of emergency? Do there need to be price ceilings on these items? And are they necessary items? And that's the piece I wonder about here. Is hand sanitizer a necessary item, or might it be okay, I mean, not necessarily ethically, but legally okay for people to take advantage of demand for a particular item that people want but don't need being really high?
Sure. So a couple things. Number one, different states have different laws and define price gouging differently. In Washington State, which, as your earlier report showed, we're really at an epicenter. We have deaths, school districts closing. It's a real crisis, obviously. And so in Washington State, it's pretty straightforward. We have a Consumer Protection Act, and it says you cannot engage in an unfair business practice. And so I think there's a strong argument that at a time of a major public health crisis, that jacking up exponentially the price of items like hand sanitizers, wipes, masks, 20, 25, 30 times during a crisis like that constitutes an unfair business practice. That's what the courts would have to sort out.
And would this apply to canned goods as well, foods, even if they're not purchased in a traditional retail establishment, as people seem to be quite keen on stocking up on those as well?
I mean, potentially, right? What I'm responding to right now is sort of not an academic debate amongst economists, for example, about, hey, is price gouging a real thing, or is that just the market doing its thing? What I'm looking at are consumer complaints that I was looking at last night from senior citizens saying, hey, I'm trying to buy a few ounces of hand gel, and when I go online or go into a bricks and mortar store, it's going to cost me $50 or $100. Look, that's outrageous. That's not right. And we need to help out those senior citizens. So for me, it's not an academic conversation. It's about making sure that those senior citizens can get a product that they need to maintain their health in a real crisis.
Bob, when you investigate e-commerce vendors for the potential of price gouging, how effective can you be if you actually find that it exists, and how can you enforce it?
Sure. So as the Attorney General, I am the enforcer of our state Consumer Protection Act, and that gives me broad investigation authority. So my office has issued what are essentially subpoenas to a number of bricks and mortar stores and online entities as well, asking for information about their products and their prices. And they have to turn those documents over to my office. That may take some time, which is why in the meantime, I'm getting the word out that we're doing this investigation without naming the specific entities. We don't do that. But I want the public to notify my office if they see what they consider to be price gouging. And I want those businesses to get their prices right. Let's dial this back. Let's get this back at the right frame for our seniors and the people in our community who need access to those products and not paying exorbitant prices.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if you find that there's price gouging on, say, Amazon's platform, is that something that the responsibility now falls on Amazon, or is that something that you go after the vendor specifically for?
Well, we would leave our options open. I'm not going to limit my options, but I would say that we take a broad view of the Consumer Protection Act. We take a broad view of what constitutes price gouging in a time of a crisis of this magnitude. And so what I can say without identifying any particular business or online entity, we have a number of investigations out there, and we want the message to be loud and clear to those businesses. They need to get their prices to a reasonable level, and they need to do it right away.
Bob, really quick, just more broadly, Scott Gottlieb, former head of the FDA today, suggested that we're losing valuable time in implementing what he called tough mitigation steps in high-risk areas like Seattle, tough measures where you'd sacrifice local activity for the sake of the nation. If we did something like that, even with economic aid to cities like Seattle, would there be legal pushback?
Well, look, from my standpoint as the chief law enforcement official in Washington State is making sure that folks in our community are safe. And we have to make all sorts of adjustments for that. School districts are closing here, as you reported earlier. The senior home where my mom lives, no more visitors are coming to visit at that senior home. Those are appropriate steps, and so I keep an open mind about that. My focus, though, is on unlawful activity that impacts consumers, like price gouging. So I'm trying to stay very focused on that. Larger policy decisions are made by those policy deciders. If they move into what we consider to be illegal activity, like price gouging, that's when they're going to hear from my office.